I'm Matt Marsh, Canboat Kingston Squadron Commander. Today, we are going to put this classic CNC 35 to bed for her 50th winter. To keep a classic boat running for years and years and years requires careful maintenance, proper winterization, and routine inspection. Today we'll show you how we do that on this particular boat. Your own sailboat may be slightly different. Start by making sure that the boat is in fact stable after being hauled out. This one is on a hefty welded steel cradle. We have pads snugged firmly up against the hull. We want to make sure that all of these pads are in fact tight, that there's no gap, and that the boat is stable on the pads. Half to 2/3 of the boat's weight should be on the keel. That firm block there is transferring the weight of the boat through the keel to the cradle. If you don't have a cradle and have to store on jack stands, check that the yard has done things properly before you start winterizing your boat. The legs of the stands should be on solid boards so that they don't sink into the gravel. The pads of the stands should be firmly wedged against the hull, and pairs of stands should be chained together underneath the boat with a tight chain or a chain and a strap. This ensures that the stands will not shift and potentially drop the boat as the ground heaves in winter. This boat has just been power washed and had its ablative anti-fouling paint mostly stripped. It's going to get repainted in the spring. But without the paint, we can see all the spots where previous owners over its half-century of life have patched up marks and refaired gouges. There's history down here. But we want to make sure, firstly, that this is safe. The thing to look at is the keel joint, where the metal part of the keel, which would be cast iron or lead in this case, joins the fiberglass part of the hull. This joint has been patched up with fairing compound many times. That's often the case on old boats. That's not a problem. What would be a problem is if we saw rust weeping from anywhere along that crack. That would be a sign that the keel bolts themselves are starting to corrode and fail. If that's the case, a surveyor or a professional engineer is needed. In this case, the joint is intact. There are some cracks in the fairing compound itself, but no breach of the watertight integrity. Next, we're going to look for the sacrificial anodes. These are lumps of zinc, magnesium, or aluminum that are designed to corrode instead of the boat's own metals. This one has used up about maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of its life. It's working well, but it needs to be scrubbed with a wire brush before going back in the water again. After it erodes that much again, it will need to be replaced. There's also a zinc anode on the propeller shaft. This one again is only about 1 year or 2 old and has gone through about half of its life. We should grab the propeller shaft and give it a little shake. There should be very little play. If that propeller shaft wobbles a lot when you shake it, that's a sign that the cutlass bearing here inside this strut needs to be replaced. Lead time on replacing those bearings can be several months, so it's best to plan that in the fall in order to get your mechanic scheduled, rather than waiting until spring. With the gearbox in neutral, we're going to give the propeller itself a spin by hand. We want to make sure that it spins freely and smoothly in both directions. Any sign of a grinding noise, spots where it might feel like it binds, are signs that the shaft seal or the shaft bearings or a gearbox bearing could be in trouble. This one spins smoothly and with no trouble through its entire arc. Next, we'll take a look at the rudder. I'm going to move the rudder by hand through its entire arc and make sure that it moves smoothly, doesn't bind, and that if I grab the whole thing and shake it, that there's no play in this rudder bearing. If there is play in the rudder bearing, it's time to plan for a replacement now. They can take months to obtain if they have to be shipped in. This one feels fine. Let's also take a look at the Seacocks. This boat has plastic Seacocks, in which case we are going to look up inside and check for any cracks, any fracturing, any sign that that plastic is nearing the end of its life. Some boats have metal Seacocks, in which case this would look like bronze, possibly with a green patina to it. That green is not a problem, but if you see any hint of pink in a metal Seacock, that means that the wrong metal was used when the boat was built. Pink is a sign that brass has started to lose its zinc, leaching out in the seawater. If that is the case, those Seacocks must be replaced before the boat is relaunched. Continuing around this side, we're also checking the hull around these pads. If a sailboat's hull is going to deflect under pressure, it will do so smoothly over a span of 1 meter or more. If there is a dent or a depression in the hull right where the pad sits, that is a sign of severe structural failure of the balsa or foam core inside that hull. In that case, the boat needs to be surveyed immediately before being relaunched. This one has a solid fiberglass hull, no core, and we can see that while there is a slight bit of pressure on those pads, the loads are nicely distributed and everything is fine. Continuing around the keel, we want to make sure that at the leading edge of the keel, where that gap sometimes opens up, that we have a smooth, continuous surface and no way for water to get in or out. Again, looking for rust, stains, or anything else leaching down that would indicate keel bolt failures. This boat has a lead keel. My neighbor's boat here has a cast iron keel. And again, you can see that seam is perfect. There's nothing leaching down. That is a good solid joint. If you saw rust weeps or anything else, big crack opening up at that joint, that boat needs professional attention. The bottom paint itself on this one is very much at the end of its life. It's going to be recoated in the spring. The blue boat there you just saw probably has another year left in that bottom paint before it needs to be redone. While you're underneath the boat, it's good to check the speed and depth transducers. These are prone to fouling, and it's important to keep them clean to get accurate readings. Depth transducers are usually ultrasonic. It's simply a matter of keeping the surface clean. Speed transducers sometimes have a paddle wheel that picks up debris and must be cleaned out every fall. This is a good time to check the dock lines and all the other running rigging. Anything that's worn out now can be ordered over the winter at a fat discount as opposed to waiting for the marked up spring prices. With the underhull inspection complete, we're ready to begin winterizing the boat from above. Good luck getting to the oil drain plug on any marine engine. They're buried so far in the bilge you simply can't reach. To change the oil on this Yanmar, we're going to shove this oil extractor tube down the dipstick hole and start pumping. With the waste oil pumped out, it's time to refill the engine with fresh oil. There's very little clearance above most sailboat engines, so we're going to remove the oil fill cap, open up our bottle of oil, and rather than pouring it like this, we're going to carefully hold it sideways for better control. This Yanmar diesel has closed cooling. There's a car-like ethylene glycol tank running coolant through the engine, hooked up to a heat exchanger. Raw water from the lake or ocean goes through the heat exchanger and out the exhaust. This cap here can only be safely removed while the engine is cold. We confirm that we do in fact have a full tank of coolant in there. and that the coolant level is correct. We're also going to open up the sea strainer. This strainer element has caught a few little bits of algae that we don't want going through the engine heat exchanger. We'll set it aside for cleaning before we reinstall it. With the oil change complete, it's time to replace all the fresh water in the engine cooling system with propylene glycol antifreeze. We've disconnected the engine's raw water intake hose and put it into that bottle of 100 Fahrenheit antifreeze. Now we're going to run the engine for a few seconds to flush out all the remaining fresh water from the cooling system. All of the fresh water in the cooling system and exhaust system has now been replaced with antifreeze. The engine's ready for the winter. The absolute top priority of winterization is to get every possible bit of water out of places where it could freeze and cause damage. Water, when it freezes, expands with tremendous pressure. Pressure enough to break steel, shatter bronze. We cannot allow any water to be trapped anywhere that it could cause such damage. This boat has flooded lead acid batteries. The best way to store these for the winter is to keep them fully charged but disconnected. If your boat has lithium batteries, refer to the operator's manual for those specific batteries. Generally, they like to be stored at between 50 and 60% charge. Their lifespan can deteriorate if they're kept at 100% charge over the winter. You don't have to be a mechanic or an engineer to save thousands of dollars by doing all this work yourself. You just need the willingness to put in a little elbow grease and to take our boat and engine maintenance course, offered by many squadrons across the country at all times of the year. Sign up now and learn how to make your boat safer and even have a bit of fun in the process.
For more information, please visit us at canboat.ca.